breaking developments on Obamacare reform as we learn a critical no vote from a Republican senator has just popped. I'm Harris Faulkner. Here's the news on it. You saw him there in the bottom box. Arizona Senator John McCain says he will not vote for the Graham-Cassidy bill. He just issued a statement saying in part, quote, "I cannot in good conscience vote for the Graham-Cassidy proposal." He cites the need for regular order and hearings on the bill. This comes just as Maine Senator Susan Collins released the statement saying she's not fully on board yet either. Quote, "I'm leaning against the bill. I'm reading the fine print on Graham-Cassidy. The premiums would be so high, they would be unaffordable." Let's bring in our political panel very early today with this breaking political news. Emily Tisch Sussman, campaign director for the Center for American Progress Action Fund, and Bree Payton, staff writer for The Federalist. Bree, I'm going to go to you first. Republicans knew that they were going to have a challenge, and they knew it might be squeaky tight and that Vice President Pence might have to break a tie. But this changes the game. How so?
Yeah, well, I definitely think that a lot of these waffling Republicans that we have been seeing are the result of ineffectual leadership coming from the Republican Party in Congress. I think that if the Republican leadership was better at flexing their muscle and getting their members in line with their agenda, we wouldn't really be seeing these problems. And I do think that some of the criticisms about the Graham-Cassidy bill are perfectly legitimate. Senator Ron Paul points out that, rightly so, that this is not full repeal, right? It's not going to fix the mess that Obamacare has got this country in, but I think some of the other criticisms are not so realistic, particularly the ones surrounding, that this would remove protections for those with pre-existing conditions. I don't think that that's a realistic expectation to have going into this, and I think John McCain is right in that the process has been so secretive and Republicans are not communicating with one another effectively, but I don't know that his grand vision of an open process is realistic at all either.
You know, Emily, this is not necessarily a win for Democrats, because the people who don't win, if you don't fix the problems with Obamacare somehow, some way, are the American people. So where do you come down on this?
Absolutely. Well, the problem with the Graham-Cassidy bill, sure, there are problems with Republican leadership, but the real problem are the ideas. The problem is the substance of the bill. The only proposal that you have after 7 years of running against health care is something that would potentially increase insurance premiums for people with pre-existing condition, kick off 400,000 just in Arizona immediately off of health care. That's a problem, right? That's why John McCain is voting against this bill, as well as how terrible the process has been moving forward. There actually was a pretty good process, a bipartisan process moving forward in the Senate, led by Senators Alexander and Murray, to actually try to stabilize the market and then move forward so you can try to get to these goals, these professed goals that everyone cares about, of lowering premiums and expanding coverage. They actually had a good process going there. We're working together the way the Senate should work, until Republican leadership tried to stick this bill in to try to get repeal in and score a win. It's more about getting a win than actually have good coverage.
You know what's interesting, Bree? I mean, okay, so you've got the policy aspect about this from Emily, but the bottom line, it seems like with McCain and others on this issue, is how the process is being handled. Is there an opportunity before the special rules run out that will enable them to do it with a majority vote, and then you got to get 60 after September 30th? Is there an opportunity for Republicans to look at the process and expand out the dialogue and the debate on this bill?
I don't think that there is an opportunity with what 62% of Democrats supporting a single-payer health care system, which would bankrupt this country and is completely not at all realistic. I do, however, agree with Emily that it is very frustrating to see, all of us were promised by Republicans who are running for re-election that they would repeal Obamacare and that they had a plan to do it. As it turns out, they just lied to us the entire time. And now we have several of these, loudmouth senators who are going off and being like, oh, no, I really don't want to do this because of this, that, and the other, and are kind of waffling about it. I mean, it certainly is frustrating that there isn't a conclusive policy action in order to fix all of these problems. And she is right that the substance in this bill is totally flawed, and it would, in fact, give unelected bureaucrats in Washington power to control how all 50 states spend all of their money, which is, too much control in the hands of Washington.
Hey, before we go on, because this is breaking news and we are just now getting some more details from the statement that I want to share with our viewers, let's pop it up. Senator McCain saying this in a statement just moments ago: we should not be content to pass health care legislation on a party line basis, as Democrats did when they rammed Obamacare through Congress in 2009. Look, he's got a fair point. And I've heard, Emily, I've heard the argument, well, no, people debated and they talked about it. But in the end, it was your House Speaker, your party's House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, who said, well, we'll pass it and see what's in it. In the end, it wasn't transparent. In the end, not enough voices got in there. So what do you say?
Look, there were, I think, about 32 hearings in both the House and the Senate on that original bill. And look, but it could have been more transparent. It always can be more transparent. The fact that Republicans went now in
still
leadership,
didn't know what was in it.
Well, she was actually referring to for the regular American people who were saying they had heard so much rhetoric to actually feel the benefits of the bill that did have to go through for it to actually become realized, which it did, which is why the majority of the American public has actually vastly changed their opinion about the law. When it was just rhetoric, they were against it. Now you can go person by person and hear, my premiums are affordable. I have a pre-existing condition. But the fact that Republicans now in leadership are not even willing to come to the table with Democrats to talk about stabilizing the market and then moving forward, that's a real problem. When you have a process in place and they totally bomb it, that's a real problem.
Not any persons there.
When Senator Murkowski did not vote to repeal Obamacare, she was greeted at the airport by crowds who were clapping for her. People were begging her to keep the health care in place. And in fact, the carve-out they were going to create to try to get her on this current Graham-Cassidy bill, the carve-out was to keep Obamacare in Alaska.
You know what's interesting,
That's the thing they wanted.
About what you're saying, and I've drilled down on some of that polling, because it's not just the top question, do you want to keep it? It's all the things that are deep inside many of those polls that were taken. Those surveys seem to show, Bree, that there just wasn't enough substance that people could kind of understand what Republicans' plan was. And that's fair.
Right.
They've had 7+ years to get this right. So what Emily is pointing to is the fact that, look, anybody would choose the demons that they know over the ones that they cannot predict.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I definitely think that much of the public's perception of Obamacare has been over Republicans tripping over their own feet and being completely unable to put together a plan that makes any sense at all.
So why is it? Because that's the question. That's the big question that Americans want to know. They put these people in office. They put a Republican president in office. And why is it that this is the case?
Yeah, I mean, it's because they lied. That's really what it is, plain and simple. They lied to all of us all throughout when they were running for office. They had no plan to do this at all. Every time that they had an opportunity to do this, they've messed it up. And it does seem almost intentional to a degree, right? When they do put together a repeal plan, it doesn't really make any sense. I think the last 3 efforts that we've seen are like, are you kidding? You're pulling this apart and you're leaving that in place? That doesn't make any sense.
That is a bold statement. I wrote it down. You feel like you were lied to as the American people. So here's what's interesting. You have a president here who's willing to deal with whomever he needs to deal with in the room. It makes you wonder what 11th hour move he might make. Emily?
Look, anything is possible with this president. I think it would be very difficult to envision a plan that he would push forward right now that would get enough votes to move forward. Look at what John McCain is talking about.
You don't know.
Look, there is no known with this president. That is absolutely for sure. But keeping Obamacare in place is a bottom line, is a red line for Democrats. And expanding the coverage is the place they would want to go. If the rhetoric coming out of the president is that he just wants to repeal it, that's not going to be something they can deal on. It would take real process, which is what had started to happen in the Senate, but there's not time for if they want to make this the end of this special rules deadline where you just need a simple majority. They would have to go to a actual bipartisan process that would take 60 votes.
It's, outside of the deadline, what we're also pressed up against is just this sort of, lack of order inside the Senate and inside the House that Americans are watching. They wonder, well, why does it take this long? But particularly in the Senate, you hear McCain and others talk about it. You wonder, though, Bree, would McCain agree to necessarily anything?
I mean, I think that's a great question, and I think a lot of the objections that we have seen from Republicans who have repeatedly, objected to all of the plans, I think definitely raise that question in a lot of our minds. And I think Democrats, if they really were interested in helping low-income individuals to have good quality health care, they'd really want to cut Medicaid and stop it, because many of the doctors who do accept Medicaid do so on a semi-exploitative basis, and fewer doctors, even even accept Medicare, right? And what we are seeing is huge increases in emergency room wait times, because those are the only places that so many people can get seen, due in large part because Obamacare expanded Medicaid. So I definitely think that, you know, Democrats, if they are seeking to help those individuals, they'd want to put together a program that looks entirely different, or they'd want to, you know, enable the marketplace to be freer to come up with solutions that actually help people, instead of expanding this policy that is really quite terrible for so many Americans.
You know, as I hear the big and bold words from both of you, I have to say that the American people must be scratching their heads. Who did they put into office on either side of the political aisle that this far into it they can't get any kind of agreement on health care? I mean, the president, formerly Obama, made 45 changes or delays with his executive authority to Obamacare. He knew that there were problems with it. Everybody knew. And we still today stand on the Friday before the week they got to get it done, scratching our heads too. I'm going to ask you to stand by, because the news continues to break, and we have lawmakers and other stakeholders